And we're live. I'm Brad Wolf from Dire Den, and I'm here with.
I'm Ryan Doyle for the Very Free Table and mystery guest, special guest star.
I'm Sean. I just realized I have the stream on the other screen. I'm Sean from the Delver.
Welcome, Sean.
Nothing like watching what you just did to create a weird feedback loop in your brain and just shut down everything.
Well, I heard one person's intro and then yours, and then it started up again, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on here?"
No good.
All right. Well, speaking of intros,
Are you ready to get casual? Grab your favorite adult beverage or combustible plant and join us for our roundtable TTRPG discussion. Oh yeah, it's time for Casual Friday. And now, here are your hosts.
that cracks me up every time.
It's like the right amount of bad. It's like the right amount of good and bad. Like it's the sweet spot for me. I don't know how everybody else out there feels about it, but like, it's good. Love it.
All right. And so today we have Sean with us. Jim couldn't be here today, so it's his turn to take a week off. I think I used up all my leave time. I'm not allowed to take any more time off.
It's true. I put in an HR complaint.
Yep. Ryan wrote me up for too many days off.
You have to merit.
Well, so we can't start a show without talking about a WotC screw up, apparently. So Wizards of the Coast has made another, this one's nowhere near as significant, but made another little blunder.
This time it's personal, though.
It is personal. They messed up pre-orders. So there were several people who didn't get they got their pre-order canceled. So and I was one of them. So yes, it was personal. What apparently happened was the people who pre-ordered, if they pre-ordered through PayPal, there were complications taking a second payment. So what Wizards of the Coast did when you pre-ordered, like I pre-ordered all three books one shot, right? They only charged me for the D&D Beyond access. They didn't charge me for the physical books. They waited until it was time to ship the player's handbook to charge me for the physical player's handbook. So if you pre-ordered on on PayPal, that second charge for a lot of people didn't go through. And for people who use like their debit card, if they had, like me, I ordered months ago. If people who used a debit card and ordered months ago, if they no longer had funds in their account, or they had gotten a new card from the bank or canceled their card and got a replacement card, their order didn't go through. So there was a large group of people who had their orders canceled, and Wizards of the Coast made it good. Like they gave me a coupon code for the cost reduction, because right, you're supposed to get a discount if you pre-ordered, and also they gave me a coupon code for free shipping since technically that was all part of the pre-order, right? So they made everything good. It was just, if you were like me, it took extra steps to get your book, and it took extra time, and I finally got it. I put in the notes, because I did the notes the other day, that I didn't have it yet, but I finally got it. It arrived today, right, just in time for the show. So
Nice, congrats.
So I had about 5 minutes to flip through the actual book before the show started.
You're prepared for deep analysis of this book that you've had for 5 minutes.
But I am happy to look at the physical copy. The physical copy is much easier on the eyes than doing all this research I've been doing for weeks, staring at D&D Beyond.
Oh yeah, the new book, especially one of the new features that I love about it the most is going to the back and using the rules like directory. If you have a question about damage or whatever, you could just find the little icon. It can send you to the page, or it'll just give you a short blurb. I don't know if the D&D Beyond version has that. I assume it does, but it is just being able to flip to the back of the book and immediately find what you're looking for. Huge improvement.
Yeah, the rules glossary is great, and the layout overall is improved. So it's definitely a better user experience with the new book, and I mean, D&D Beyond, on the other hand, is a mess right now. Because they last minute they left all the legacy content on there, and it's just I've been going back and forth because I'm trying to do research on the new edition for all these videos, but my players are still playing old content. So when we play, I have to have access to the legacy stuff, and it's kind of a mess.
I'm already finding huge issues in D&D Beyond and how they're doing some of the new stuff. For example, one of the things that you get from one of the backgrounds is you get to learn a language from one of two tables, be it the common or the exotic languages table. In D&D Beyond, the short sentence following that description is gone. And so it doesn't allow you to choose an exotic language. But if you look in the actual physical book, it's there. And I'm like, what, why did you remove it and then change the code so it doesn't allow it? It feels like they're like post printing starting to amend things, or at least somebody just fully messed up and didn't include it.
Yeah, well, they've had to amend some stuff because, like, the physical book, some of the rules are wrong. Like the Goliath ability. The Goliath ability says you have advantage on grapple checks, but in the rules, you no longer make a check to grapple somebody. They make a saving throw against you, right? So they've had to change some stuff in D&D Beyond because there were inaccuracies in the first printing of the book. But in making those changes and leaving up the legacy content, it appears to have been causing other problems as well.
And this, like, my whole feeling, like what Phil just said was my first impulse. Like, and what you said to open the show, what's up, Kelp? What you said to open the show, I wish we didn't have to open the show every week with something. Like, this is what happens when you burn off all of your customer base's goodwill, right? Like, oh, you launched a major new product. There's going to be bumps in the road logistically, software wise, like, perfectly acceptable. Unless, of course, you've done 100 things before now to make mistakes, screw things up. You get rid of staff. Clearly, there's like a deficit of institutional knowledge at play here. Like, I'm a dude in a tiny room, and I just made a book, and I was aware of like things like this happening and took steps to prevent issues like this from coming up. And I'm just some dude. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm figuring it out as I go. So like the fact that no one in a Fortune 500 company was like, okay, if we do this transaction twice over 100 days, like that could create some issues. And if I take $185 out of someone's account and then come back looking for more because I didn't charge them shipping or whatever, because there was two iterations of this issue going on at the same time. It's a mess. It's a big mess. And it doesn't feel like anyone's in charge up there.
And just to cancel it wholesale, like a Kickstarter, if there's any issue with your payment, it'll notify you and give you like a time period to fix it. Yeah. They have D&D Beyond, they have all these resources. How could they not do that? How could they not have fallbacks?
Yeah. And they send you an email. They say, hey, your order's been canceled. Here's what you need to do to fix it. But just like getting the notification your order's been canceled, we're like, well, screw you. And the other thing, they gave me the option to just cancel outright. Like, I could have canceled the whole thing. Wow. And I was tempted to, because in the moment, I'm ticked off. In the moment, I'm like, yeah, screw this. I'll just go to the local game store and I can have it today.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's even weird because it's different for us too, being people who cover this kind of content on our channels. Like we this is a business in some degree to us. So to like get that message like, hey, sorry, cancel full book. I that's insane.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, like you said, like we got into this business because we like this game. We want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. We've been playing it, for long periods of time in our lives, and it's something that's important to us. And we don't, like I said, top of the show, I don't want to have to keep talking about what's wrong with Wizards of the Coast every show.
And I mean, yeah, I don't like to talk about like the Dragon Tuber class. What are we? I'm still working on that, but this is why I don't have a business card. But like, okay, cool. I already know I'm not special enough to get free stuff early. And then the day it's supposed to arrive, you get an email like, well, we cancel it. How badly do you really want to work for it? Can you jump through these hoops for me? Submit a ticket. There's other games. There's other games. It's not great business practice.
Yeah. Well, and it's like Ryan was saying, it's divisive for the fan base as well. Like I can't put out a 5e video without getting comments about how people hate Wizards of the Coast now. And my channel is built on like all things D&D. Like I put out content for Shadow Dark and old school and older editions and all that sort of stuff. So my audience is pretty diverse as far as what edition they're playing. It doesn't help my channel, right? It doesn't help me support D&D when you keep messing up D&D.
Yeah. I know that I'm onto something when I'm getting people defending Wizards. Like people are attacking me for getting on Wizards case. And like one line down, people are attacking me for being a shill and being in their pocket and being like a WotC fanboy. It's just like, I might be onto something because everybody hates me right now.
I'm playing both sides.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but hey, the algorithm pushed that video more because you were getting all sorts of comments, right? Because you were getting.
And this is when my YouTube channel is not bigger because I hate that game. and then you get people yelling at you for playing that game, and it's like. Right. You're feeding the game right now. I don't know, whatever. You can't win.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just keep reminding myself this whole thing is supposed to be fun, and I'm just going to keep having fun with it. So, well, speaking of fun, Ryan, do you want to mention the article that you ran across?
Oh man, I thought we would space it out a little bit to stop yelling about things, but this headline came across my I don't know, Reddit feed today or somewhere. Wizards of the Coast plans to replace customers with AI. This is from the Only Edition. It's clearly not serious, but it is a brilliant article of like following the steps from that whatever investor call that the CEO said they were pursuing AI, which honestly I'm not super angry about because they have to say that in any sort of investor call because that's the new. You need to say enough of the buzzwords to keep people from selling off your stock. But yeah, the AI artists and AI dungeon creation and AI character creation and AI dungeon masters, perhaps. The next logical step is like just replace all the humans and just have AI be the players and the customer base, and then you don't have to worry about all of this internet outrage you keep generating by screwing up.
Yeah, we'll just replace all the customers with AI, and the AI will tell us that we're great. What? The Only Edition, is that what that was again?
Yeah, I'll throw it in the chat.
Throw the link in the chat there.
It's if it takes you 5 minutes to read,
Yeah.
That's a long time. It's a quick one. It's fun. There you go, everybody. It made me. I literally laughed out loud. I was like, this is perfect.
All right. Well, now that we got the Wizards of the Coast drama out of the way, the one thing that InWorld told us about this week is that Penguin Random House has announced that they're going to publish a new Ravenloft novel. So it's a novel set in the Ravenloft campaign setting. So that's about all the details they give. They don't tell us much. There's not even a title for it yet, but it's a work in progress. So that sounds interesting.
Is there a author attached to it? Because I couldn't find anything.
Yeah, it doesn't mention an author in the original article. So, if anybody wants to apply for that job.
The biggest detail I have is April 2025, and Strahd plus other ? So, I think that'll. Well, I guess it depends on the quality of the product, but that Ravenloft has some of the deepest fans, I think. Mm-hmm. And there's plenty of people in their silos, but like people who like Ravenlocks. Love Ravenlocks. There's not a lot of like half in, half out people out there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that could be interesting. You know, we know they couldn't work out a deal with was it Weiss and Hickman, the folks that do the Dragonlance novels. So those novels got canceled. So maybe they figured, well, if we can't do Dragonlance novels, let's look at our other settings and see what kind of novels we can come up with.
Insert Dark Sun joke here.
Did they not produce new Dragonlance books? I thought they did.
They did the Dragonlance campaign setting in the new board game, but did they work out the deal with them in order to publish those books?
I don't know if it's Tracy. Yeah, it's Dragons of Fate, Dragons of Eternity, and Dragons of Deceit.
Okay, so they did get that deal worked out. I know there was a lawsuit between the two, and they had to figure a bunch of stuff out.
Yeah, these came out in 2023. Yeah, I know there was a whole like kerfuffle at the beginning, obviously, with everything going on. I'm a huge Dragonlance fan, so I was following it pretty closely. And there are, I don't know if you guys know this. Do you know how many books there are in Dragonlance?
It's a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several many. I'm gonna say I'm gonna put it in the 30s.
Oh.
Well,
190 novels
Jesus.
are set in the Dragonlance setting.
Yeah. Yeah, we played Dragonlance back in the day, back in like the 80s and early 90s, and one of my friends who actually DM'd most of that campaign was a huge Dragonlance fan, and he had at that time he had read every Dragonlance book. I don't know if he's kept up that pace, but yeah, like we wrapped up that campaign in like 93, I think 94. And at that point, he had read every Dragonlance novel.
I wonder what the pipeline from reading every Dragonlance novel is into has read one series by Brandon Sanderson.
That's a good question.
It's probably pretty. There's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram.
It's a circle.
Yeah.
So the new Dragonlance books. So they worked out that deal. Have any of them actually come out?
Yeah, that looks like they released it. One released in 2023. I've seen them at the bookstore here in town, so that's how I knew that at least they were coming out in some degree. I haven't read any of them. I've only ever read the core trilogy.
Yeah, that was me. I read the core trilogy, and my friends kept going. I was just like, I was happy with the original three.
Mm-hmm. I've heard Time of Twins is good. I've never read it though.
Not a huge Dragonlance guy, but like bummed that the movie fell through.
Same.
Yeah,
I was so looking forward to that. What is it? Joe Manganiello is such a hyper fan of this community that I think he would have done it a lot of justice, and I'm really sad to see that not come to fruition.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if he's able to ever reboot that project somehow.
Mm-hmm.
What, Wagon Pants? Hold on, I can do better. Give me a second. Dragon Pants. Nope, I got nothing. Sorry, guys.
Drake Pike.
There it is.
Drake Pike. There you go. Wyvern Sword.
Yeah.
All right. So to our main topic, right? So we've been talking about the new Player's Handbook. Again, I finally got my copy.
Yay.
And we left off last time we hadn't gotten to the Ranger or the Paladin, so we're going to talk about those and hopefully get to the Rogue today as well. Because I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I think the Ranger is more powerful than the Rogue.
Mm.
That's my hot take.
It's so hard for me to remove my bias because rogues are my favorite. It is so, I recognize that it is hard for me to be objective. But I think in combat, which is way more than 1/3 of this game, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, you are absolutely correct. However much we might bemoan the Rangers' current incarnation, it's better.
It is better, yeah. In fact, I I mean, Jim said this last week, right? Like the target audience for this edition is for people who liked the last edition. If you liked 5th edition, you're gonna like 5.5. It's it's just 5th edition, with all sorts of tune-ups. Like all the player classes have gotten more powerful. All the player classes have gotten better features. It's just it's 5th edition, but better all the way around, I think.
Now, even 5-year.
Yeah. but like we've talked about before, if that's not what you wanted, if you wanted a new and interesting game, right? This is not it. This is just a better version of 5e. If you wanted something, that was more streamlined and easier to play and faster to play, this is not it. Right? It's just more 5e. So,
and I fall into that camp of like I would have preferred 6th edition. Fred last week, I don't know if actually How to RPG's even awake yet in the other side of the planet, but Fred last week and on several podcasts, What Up Wizards and Warp Drives, Fred's been on this campaign that like we should 5.5, 5R, 5.24, like we should call it 6e. It's 6e. And I don't think it is, and I wish it was. But the second we were like backwards compatibility is like a core feature of this, however questionable that is in practice. It's like, bummer. Like give me something new and let me decide which one to use. But
yeah, I agree. I wanted something new. Sean, what were you going to say about that topic, that point?
Well, I was going to say for 6th edition, I think I made a video a while ago why it isn't called 6th edition, why it isn't called 5e. I am a fan of 5th edition revised or revision or something like that. I was also looking forward a lot to 6th edition, something new, something that I could just kind of sink my teeth into. But having a campaign right now that it's my friend's campaign where we're using the backward compatibility, I'm actually kind of surprised. It is working as intended for our classes and our subclasses. I don't know if that's across the board. I don't know if that's going to translate well, but I'm running a swashbuckler rogue. And so I'm still using the swashbuckler subclass. It's seamless so far. I don't know how long that's going to last, but yeah, I was honestly very surprised by how backward compatible it was, at least on D&D Beyond.
Yeah, I'm running a table where I put it to the players like, you can update your character or not. I'm actually interested in seeing if it works. If some of you do and some of you don't, and that's how it worked out democratically. And it's been fine. It's been mostly good. I am starting to see 2014 players looking over 2024 players because I didn't do the whole codified like I am changing everything that changed. It's like if you're using 2024, you're only using the PHB. Otherwise, you're playing the game that we were playing before. So we had like 2 versions of Sleepcast the other day, and I was like, "Oh, is this breaking down a little bit?" But like, what an interesting compare and contrast exercise. So yeah, it works. Long story short, it works. I think players are incentivized to buy the new thing because it's slightly better. Yeah.
Yep. And Wizards and Warp Drives is right. He just said because 4th edition was a disaster and they don't want to risk repeating the history. Like, absolutely. I know why they've got a good seller on their hands. They're not going to take risks. And we saw that early on in the playtest. Like some of the early UA stuff, there were some cool ideas and those went away pretty quickly. But back to our Ranger on topic here. So quickly, I'm just going to run through some of the key changes to the Ranger. So, Hunter's Mark is one of the few things that still provides a damage boost for ranged weapons. Since Sharpshooter no longer works the way it used to, and then the Ranger gets weapon mastery. And with weapon mastery, you're able to get features like Nick and Graze, especially Nick, right? If you want to run Dritz with your animal companion and your 2 scimitars, You can actually do that now with Nick, and so you still get that extra attack with your extra weapon, and you're still able to use your bonus action to command your beast companion or to cast your hunter's mark, right? And rangers get access to all fighting styles. So if you don't want to play Dritz and you want to give your ranger, a two-handed weapon and take great weapon fighting, like you can do that now. So there's definitely some new options. And the other thing that's not in the class itself that makes the ranger better is that a lot of ranger spells got upgrades. Hail of Thorns, Conjure Volley, Conjure Barrage, Magic Weapon, Jump, and Lightning Arrow are all improved, and none of those require concentration anymore.
I was about to say, and that's a big one, and I think you don't. That's the complaint about Hunter's Mark. Everyone wanted concentration off of it. I'm not the math guy who's going to discuss whether or not that's OP or not. Yes, there's a lot of things on the Ranger spell list that are concentration. A lot of those are fundamentally outside of combat, or, oh god, I want combat to stop abilities. Some of the big ones don't have concentration anymore, so you can stack them with Hunter's Mark.
Right. Yeah. So instead of taking concentration off Hunter's Mark, they took concentration off of a bunch of other ranger spells. So it works out. I think it works. It's definitely going to put out more damage, especially if you're building around the Nick property with two weapon fighting, or you're building around the Grays property with a big two-handed weapon.
Or even like Vex is the one that's on most of the range weapons. And even that'll get you. Yeah, I think people undervalue weapon mastery because it's like not in a single class's silo. It kind of gets baked into the price, but like that's a big boost to ranger out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the weapon mastery, and I know I'm on record saying I'm not a fan of it, but it does its job as far as they were looking for a way to give marshals more options and put out more damage so that the marshals could keep pace with spellcasters. And weapon mastery does it. It is a solution. Again, it's not the solution I necessarily wanted because it just gives you more components to the game, which I think slows down gameplay, right? But I'm not one of those people who loved 5th edition because I'm a min-maxer and I'm not a big build guy. Like I'm not that person who wants to like squeeze all the juice out of every subclass feature, right? I'm not that guy who wants to min-max and optimize. But if you're into that sort of thing, 5.5 is definitely your game. They've made that clear, I think. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Ranger?
I mean, I mostly like it. I'm on record a bunch of times saying like the problems with the Ranger are problems with the main gameplay loop of 5e, right? Like a Ranger is supposed to be good at exploration. There's a fundamental lack of exploration in most 5e games unless you bring it yourself. I bring it myself, so that's less of an issue for me. But I think like all of the fixes to the Ranger are actually fixes to like making 5e exploration more interesting. I think they oversold how new and shiny it is when a lot of the cool new things were in Tasha's years ago. But beyond that, it's no longer the whipping boy, and I think that is a success for WotC. It's no longer the weak link in the chain. Do I want different things? Do I want better things? Do I consider them, as Brad just said, like this is a solution, not necessarily my preferred solution? Sure, yes. But I think to deny that it's better is, maybe jumping on the anti-WotC train.
I like the new Ranger. But however, I will preface, I liked the old Ranger, and I know a lot of people. But for me, Ranger was always like it was a flavor. It was a flavor of fighter. And so what usually ended up happening was I would make a fighter and then I would take levels in Ranger. And that made it bearable for me to use. I think that's why I liked the old version. Looking at this new version, though, I could reasonably see myself and other people, especially my players, playing a ranger and having at least some capability as the other classes do, which makes me incredibly happy because I used to only recommend take ranger as like an extra thing later on. But looking at the abilities, I am excited by it. I have a lot of exploration in my games as well, so this does slot into it fairly easily. Yeah, I am a fan of it. As as you guys have already said, I kind of echo your sentiment of it's not the fix, but it is a fix. I think it can only go up from here, though. This is, in my mind, this is the worst it's going to be going forward. I hope, and so I think they can only improve from here.
That's a good point. And the other thing too with the ranger is, when we compare ranger to warlock, right? Like people love playing the warlock, but I never thought mechanically the warlock was that great to play.
Same.
But the reason people love playing the warlock is because it has this thematic piece to it of your patron, and that gives your DM a way to guide a campaign. Like I have a player who loves warlocks, and my last 2 campaigns, like one of the key features to the story, the big piece of the character development, was because the warlock and their patron was driving the narrative, right? And so it's interesting that people really like the warlock, even though I think mechanically it was kind of as underpowered as the ranger in 2014. But I think it was easier for people to latch on to the class fantasy and use the patron narratively. It was easier to do that than it was for folks to come up with cool exploration things to show off and shine the spotlight on the ranger, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it might also be like a saturation issue in terms of like when you think of ranger. In media, there's Aragorn. Aragorn is the go-to. Everyone's like, oh, that's a ranger. Aragorn's a fighter. And like it doesn't translate into that fantasy well. But at the same time, there's not a lot there are warlocks in media, but I don't know how many of my players know who Elric of Melniboné is. And it's such a new, interesting concept for them as a warlock to be like, oh, I have this like eldritch patron. It sells them on it immediately. And I think that's what makes it really interesting for them, where it's like you have this example that's not really the example, or you have this brand new thing that is weird and eldritch, kind of like the class, and you kind of get into it that way.
Yeah. And when you think of iconic rangers, right, they kind of fall into 3 categories, right? Because you've got Aragorn, you've got Drizzt, and then you've got the Witcher, right? I feel like the Witcher kind of fits that ranger category, the monster hunter, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. I
That's
didn't consider that.
That's interesting.
And so I think, if I was in charge of ranger design, those would be the 3 wickets I would be trying to hit, like with my ranger design, right? I would be trying to, give the ranger, options that are going to make it play like Aragorn, make it play like Drizzt, and then make it play like the Witcher. Like those should be the 3 kind of targets you're aiming for when you're building the ranger class, in my opinion.
I love there's a thaumaturge in Pathfinder 2nd edition, which is like witchery. I don't like, how would you build? You can't build a Witcher in 5th edition, really. Like you're leaving stuff on the table. I feel like the coolest parts are I am going to concoct this one particular potion against this one particular monster. Crafting's coming up. Maybe not enough, but we'll see what the DMG says. But that's interesting. That's an interesting challenge. And it's kind of remarkable that I haven't thought harder about it before.
I will say, a little plug of mine. I created a feat for 5e to kind of mimic Witcher gameplay. And so I never considered putting it on a ranger, but a ranger makes so much sense for that. I think you can do it in 5th edition. I think you need to take certain liberties with how it is played. Like, instead of you craft the potion, I think it's okay to make the assumption that the player already crafted the potion and that they are using it at a time of need, because basically making it an instant ability, but the flavor behind it being like, oh, you prepared for this. You knew that this monster was going to come up eventually. So I think it can be done. I think it's just you got to take a lot of liberty where you can't in other classes.
Yeah, you can do it. I'm just saying it's not there, but maybe it's coming, because you have search and study now as like actions in combat. And out of the gate, I think a lot of players are going to be like, oh, that's a waste of an action. But depending on what's happening on the other side of the screen, like if the game makes it worth investing an action to figure out somebody's vulnerability, and the ranger is particularly suited for that task, like that's a class fantasy that I like.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of comments in the chat about Blood Hunter.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Blood Hunter, if I'm being honest. It's so bloated.
The where was the one? Oh, here we go. This one.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they rebuilt the Blood Hunter into Ranger spell-like effects for buffing Ranger options. That sounds cool.
And I will say,
really
if Phil did it, he didn't do it half-ass.
Phil, do you have a video on that?
Oh, on the blood, I did. It didn't do well, but the feat itself, I call it the Fable Slayer, and basically it just amends some of the issues I had with Blood Hunter. Like, one of the big things that it was like, if it's a certain type of creature, like a Fey, Fiend, or Undead or something, you get advantage on the check, like intelligence or wisdom checks, to like figure something out about it. I felt like DMs that I've played with are they like to keep it close to the chest, that they're not willing to say it is a Fey, Fiend, or Undead. So they're like, maybe. And they're loosey-goosey with it. So I just was like, you have advantage on survival in nature to track and identify creatures just across the board. It makes it interesting. If you know what a owlbear footprint looks like, you know what a rabbit footprint looks like, probably. And then like I added some other things, like melee or ranged attacks have this property that can take away a creature's resistances for 1 round. And so you're not just helping yourself, you're helping the party. And then another, just across the board, all of your weapons are always considered silvered, because you're always prepared to silver them, or always prepared to know where to stab on a monster to actually get some damage in, even if it has that immunity or resistance.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah. It's on D&D Beyond if anyone wants to check it out. We did a lot of play testing and stuff, so it was cool.
Very cool. So, any thoughts on the Ranger before we move to Paladin? Any thoughts on the Ranger subclasses?
One thing we were saying before we got started, we always try to like bottle it up and save save the cross talk for the show. But if they do a little bit more with resistance and immunity and damage types, force damage is famously like, oh, a few things are resistant to it, but it doesn't come up a ton. So if it comes up more, that actually makes Hunter's Mark even more valuable, right? If more things are responding to or immune to radiant damage, that changes the numbers on Smite. Like we're still looking at 1/3 of the game with all of these things.
Yeah, and like we keep saying, the monster manual is going to be the most crucial part of this to see how viable this game is to play, because we clearly have seen, if the monster manual stays at the same power level it was at, then this is just a massive. It's not a power creep; it's like a power jump, right? Yeah. The new player's handbook is just a big jump in more power for the players. So we have to see the monster manual to know if this edition is really going to work or not, in my opinion. So, but yeah, that's a good point, Ryan. That if we see some cool stuff in the monster manual, with like damage type options or that sort of thing, see more immunities and more resistances, or even more vulnerabilities, right? That could make the game more interesting for us who are on the DM side of things.
which is our audience too. So,
Yeah. So
I'm happy with the subclass breakdown. I think everyone's initial read was like, "Oh, I'm looking for my favorite, and it's not here, or it is." But I think in general with the subclasses, they've done a good. Actually, it's funny. I might disagree with this sentiment for the paladin, but for the most part, they covered a lot of the bases. What you would expect, and what Sean just said earlier is insightful. We're starting over, right? This is the fewest amount of 2024 subclasses we're ever going to have. More are coming. Theoretically, they're going to be better, or at least I'll bet that they're stronger. But yeah, so we got, what are we working with? We're working with Beastmaster, which you need. How do you guys feel about the stock? Here's your creature, air, land, sea. Here's the stat block for it.
Huge fan, and it's because I've used it before. And we used the Tasha rules when I had a creature, and we were in a very high fantasy setting. So I had a jackalope companion, and we were able to build that because of this kind of stock. And so I'm a big fan of it and allowing it to kind of be a little bit more unique to the player and let them craft it.
yeah, I like it. I think it's. I wish they had done something similar for the druid. Like they tried in the Unearthed Arcana, and apparently everybody voted it down.
Yeah, that feels diff. Druid is wizard, right? And the ranger is paladin is the cleric as ranger is to druid, right? That's the level of complexity. I'm like a fighter with a little dip into cleric, I'm a pally, a little dip into druid, I'm a ranger. It works if you think about it just the right amount, not too much. I like the less complexity on the ranger side of it, perchance, but with the modularity. Give me the monster manual. Give me every beast in the book if I'm going to play a druid, right? That's one that I agreed with that vote at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I like the Beastmaster Ranger. I know some people have been critical because of the reliance of the class on Hunter's Mark, and the fact that you use your bonus action for both casting and moving Hunter's Mark, and you also use your bonus action to make your beast attack. But one thing you can do is use an attack, use one of your attacks to tell your beast to attack. And it doesn't specify an attack action, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're using the Nick property and you're doing the Dritz thing with 2 scimitars, you're getting that extra attack from your Nick property. And so you could spend that to make your beast attack. So you're still able to get your attack, make the beast attack, and use your bonus action to cast Hunter's Mark.
Oh, interesting.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
So they don't make that obvious. But if you sit with it long enough, you figure out, okay, so it works still.
And that's always that's the fantasy of the Beastmaster, right? You run up, you hit the thing, and you duck, and the panther comes over the top of you, right? And right behind you.
Also, Ryan, are you comfortable with me posting the link to my, what's it called? My feat in the chat?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to double check.
Thank you for asking. But yes, promote. Hey, everybody, support third-party creators. If you want cool stuff to exist, pay for it sometimes, once in a while.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but I was proofreading a draft of a potential Ranger alternative this week. I can't say who or what it's going to be called, but that was fun to kind of get in there and do some design work.
And that's we don't have problems. We got opportunities, folks. Let's go. Let's change the whole narrative here. Oh, you don't like the Ranger? Make a better one. Let's do it.
But yeah, I think the Beastmaster, Fey Wanderer, and Hunter subclasses all, they all got some improvement over. I guess well, the Fey Wanderer kind of didn't change much at all from. Is that Atasha's one, or Xanathar's one? I can't remember.
Good question.
I think Xanatar.
Yeah. And Gloomstalker got a nerf, which I think it needed. So.
Yeah, Gloomstalker was their answer to everyone crying about the Ranger. It's like, okay, fine, here's the OP Ranger. And yes, you've seen it in action. It's like, wait, you can what? Wait, that what? How do I challenge you now?
Yeah, I ran a campaign where like right after Xanathar's came out, and I had a player playing the Gloomstalker who was using the two one-handed crossbows, and the crossbow expert feat. And that thing was it was like killing everything. So, but speaking of nerfing, are we ready to talk about the Paladin?
I'm ready.
I don't. And maybe all of my opinions are just because I'm mostly the dungeon master and not the player. But like, I am pro balance, and I don't think it's a nerf. I don't think it's so bad. Hot take.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think the nerf is a bad thing for Paladin. What's your take?
I think okay. So I do disagree with one thing: using the bonus action to do the smiting. I'm not a fan of that. In the terms of, I think that you can use bonus action for a lot of cool things in D&D, and just using it for that kind of class specific ability, I feel for the Paladin. However, I do like the idea of it being once per turn, because smiting, like I think my friend Ridley is in the chat right now watching, and they are my 20th level Paladin. When you're fighting a creature and you're getting off 2 4th level smites in a round, it can devastate a creature overwhelmingly. And I will say another cool thing: there's no damage cap anymore to the smite ability, which is really nice, because there used to be a low cap at like 4th level spell slot. Even if you used a 5th, it didn't do any more damage. But now it does a little bit more damage. So I think there is the scaling. There is like a chance to go higher up. I do agree though with the change, and I don't think it ruins the Paladin, but I think people who chose the Paladin purely for that power fantasy will probably not choose to play Paladin again. It'll be people that are choosing it for the roleplay aspect only.
Yeah, and it's weird, like the internet groupthink that like this one feature got nerfed a little bit, and now everybody's like, oh, the Paladin's broken, it's never going to work again. When overall the Paladin is better in every other way, right? You get spells at first level now. You get weapon mastery. You get access to all the different fighting styles, so you can make a dual wielding Paladin now. It got upgrades in every other category, but the one thing got a little bit of a nerf, and now it's got everybody's ire. So.
And I think that speaks to the way it was broken. If there's one thing that's like a must-have, a must-take, I don't care what other, like, don't ask me what other spells I'm preparing, because I'm only ever using Smite.
No.
Maybe that's a subclass. If that's a whole class, I don't know. That's less than interesting.
Yeah. Well, but as you say that, I'm thinking about I have a player who her first time ever playing was in one of my previous campaigns, and she played a Paladin, and she absolutely loved that character, totally embraced the role play aspect, like Sean was saying, of the Paladin, and then and she just she played it really straightforward, just used Smite as much as she could, right? And now, it's been some years. She's finally come back to be able to play again, and she's playing a Ranger this time around. And she's struggling to figure out how to put out damage with her Ranger, right? Because the Ranger's a little more complicated. You've got to figure out, okay, I got to add my Hunter's Mark. I've got to do these other things, and so I think there is Like there was something clean about just like if you're a paladin, you just smite, you know. But for I think every other type of player, right, who doesn't want just the straightforward easy thing to do and wants options, the new paladin is so much better because you have so many other things you can do. You know, with your spell casting options and your weapon masteries and fighting styles, you can build. I think you can build a lot of different paladins now that you really didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And not to jump too far off topic, but that's one of the big things I like about cleric now, especially life domain. You have that ability to make what I consider to be the prime cleric, which is guy in a robe with a staff who just casts healing and support spells. I love that idea. Mm-hmm. And so having the paladin kind of get into this new space where they are able to make something that isn't just Brennan Lee Mulligan calls it hot, dumb, and attractive, or hot, dumb, and something like hot, dumb, and something, and like that's every paladin. And now it's like no, you can make like a really unique type of character that kind of breaks the mold while still fitting in this new mold.
Yeah. Well, and where'd it go?
Hot, dumb, and strong.
Yep, hot, dumb, and strong.
There it is. Yeah, with this point, what you were saying, Brett, about like different players, it's not even just equipping different fantasies, but it's also like play styles. To have, like, I guess you have it in the classes per se. I mean, they have that table actually of like complexity. They call it wizard average, so I kind of have discounted that table in my mind. But to have like subclasses, like this is like, you can't call it beginner or simple. Actually, you got to call it like streamlined, a baseline. I don't know. There's a term of art there, but to have like to have the Oath of Smite paladin and then have the diversifiable classes on top, subclasses on top of that, be an interesting project.
Yeah, and How to RPG points out that Lay on Hands has had an adjustment as well. That was something I didn't mention when I was going down the list of all the things that have improved for the Paladin. Is Lay on Hands is now a bonus action.
Mm-hmm.
So you can heal and still attack, which is a definite improvement over the old Paladin.
There's a lot of healing buffs. Like all the healing spells are stronger. There he is.
Jim just
Yep.
showed up.
We're in your house.
So, but yeah, and talking about the different ways to build a paladin, right? Like, so what do you think about the paladin subclasses? I'm gonna jump over here to them.
Personally, I'm a big fan, but the reason I've done so much research into the paladin is because in my upcoming campaign, two of my players, one being my partner, one being my friend from high school, both decided to choose paladins. And so we did this whole deep dive into the new abilities and kind of seeing what they do. Oath of Ancients is one of my favorites, and it's only improved.
Nice.
And so one of my friends is playing that, and then Oath of Vengeance, which we didn't even consider as a possibility until we read the abilities, and my partner was like, that sounds awesome. And I was like, I have ways that I could make you vengeful. So we have like this whole like it inspires a lot of role play just off the offset, plus all of the abilities being improved across the board. And they're little tiny tweaks too, to these ones at least, and it just makes all the difference.
Yeah, I always thought the Oath of Ancients was an interesting paladin, but I never had a player play it in any of the campaigns over the last 10 years. So I'll be interested to see now if it's something players want to play for the mechanics, and then we can get into the whole like
The role play,
Feywild, Fey Court. There's so much there with the Fey. Like it's so
good.
Yeah, it's like take all your worst fairy tales and all the drama of Game of Thrones, and that's Fae. Like you can do so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then just be zany whenever you want to at the same time. It's like,
yep.
Yeah. And and the other thing too, thinking about that, right? Talking about like using the Fae for roleplay, the new Fae Pact Warlock is much improved as well. So I'm curious, just now having like that light bulb come on, I'm gonna go tinker around with the Paladin Warlock multi-class with the Oath of Ancients and Fae Pack, and see if you can have a cool, you know, Fae Knight, you know, Green Knight kind of character. Yeah,
I like that. Well, one of the cool things that I've learned about Paladin recently, which is not news to anybody, is that you don't need a deity. It is your oath that gives you the power. And so I've incorporated a lot of that into my world because I had all of these orders, these holy groups, and now our Fey Knight, our Oath of Ancients Paladin, they are a paladin that just came into the oath in the forest, and it is a wholly like natural thing for them to do, and like they don't have a deity that they worship. In fact, they don't like a lot of the deities, and so having that kind of like contrast with some of the other people who are like, for her, she's a paladin of the Dragonborn culture in my world, which they get their power from the oath, and they worship a deity, but the deity is just a reincarnation of their leader from when they first arrived. So to see all of this lore that I had for deity paladins now is just kind of a sideline to basically oath paladins, and it's kind of creating this division in my world that is only multiplied by all of these new rules and new abilities and how that kind of comes to be.
Yeah, it's always fun if you have a persistent homebrew world. When the new edition comes out, it's always fun to like figure out, okay, how does this impact my world, and how do these character designs or the new spell design, right? Which is why, you know, in the past, Dungeons and Dragons had like massive calamities happen between editions.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not. Sorry.
So and of course, I think the Oath of Glory is a good choice as well, as a nice difference between the three that we saw in the 2014 Player's Handbook, because the Oath of Glory gives you another way to kind of play Paladin. I think it stands out more than some of the other subclasses did, because it gives you that. For me, the Oath of Glory is very much the Hercules, Perseus, the Greek.
Hot, dumb, strong.
Yeah,
Hot, dumb, strong.
Yeah, hot, dumb, strong, but like it's a little more selfish without being evil, right? Like I'm in this to be the hero. I want to stand apart from the crowd. I want to be that guy that rises above, right? So it's kind of like the selfish paladin, but without like the Oath of Conquest, where it has like this really evil, sinister overtone to it.
Mm-hmm. When I first saw Oath of Glory in Theros, it seemed a little weak to me when I first saw it, so I never used it. I think I had one player use it, and it seemed to work out pretty well. I was very surprised to see it appear in the 2024 version. I didn't imagine if any of the subclasses came, it would be that one from this standalone MTG setting book. But from what I've seen, from what I've read, it looks really interesting, and I'm excited to see more people playing it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what the take is, like 3 years from now, on how all these subclasses shake out. After everybody's played them a little bit, to see if there's, if we have. I don't think we do. I don't think there's going to be anyone that stands out as bad as the old Way of the Four Elements monk.
Oof.
Like that one was just unplayable. So I don't think we're going to have anything that bad. But I'm kind of curious to see how all these play out over time. But I think they did a good job of selecting the subclasses for Paladin. So, any other thoughts on Paladin?
No.
So let's talk about our rogue. Let me see here. I have so many tabs open. But yeah, so the rogue got upgrades, but I don't know that those upgrades are going to be as powerful in combat as the upgrades that everybody else got. And that's why I said my hot take was that the ranger I think now is actually better than the rogue as far as like actual combat effectiveness.
That makes me angry.
Well, I'll qualify that though with something I've said before is I don't think any of these classes are subclasses. I haven't done a deep dive on the subclasses, but I don't think any of these subclasses really stand out as bad, right? Like, I don't think I agree with Sean. I don't think the 2014 Ranger was as bad as everybody said it was. I do think the monk was pretty bad compared to the rest of the classes in 2014. But there wasn't a huge gap between, with the possible exception of the monk, there wasn't a huge gap in power difference between the classes in 2014. And I think there's even less of a gap. You know, I think you're still going to be able to say wizards up here at the top, sorcerers probably number 2, you know, rogues probably at the bottom, the rest are somewhere in the middle. I think that's how it's going to shake out after we play this for a while. But I don't think the gaps, I think the space between all of those is pretty small. Like it's not. In fact, I think you would have a hard time doing the S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier. I think you'd have a hard time doing that because I don't think there's that much of a difference.
We'll still see plenty of them. Don't worry.
Yeah, you probably would still be able to do it, but like I would feel kind of bad. Like I feel disingenuine, right? Like if I was doing that kind of tier structure with that many categories, and because if you put rogue at D tier and wizard at A tier, that just feels wrong because that means there's like 3 tiers in the middle. And there's just not that big of a gap between the classes, I don't think. So, but as far as the rogue, they get weapon mastery now, not as many because they're only proficient in simple weapons, so they're not going to be able to get the weapon masteries that are on the big 2-handed weapons. Steady aim is now part of the core class. It was a bonus feature or a optional feature before. They get the new cunning strike ability, which is kind of cool. They get reliable talent at 7th level instead of I think it used to be at like 11th level. So they get reliable talent a lot earlier, a lot sooner, I guess is the proper English there. When they get slippery mind, they get a bonus they get proficiency in charisma saves as well as intelligence saves. So they get an extra save there. And then their stroke of luck at 20th level, it used to turn a miss into a hit or a failure into a success. It's been upgraded. It turns a failure into a 20. So if you're using it on an attack, that's an automatic critical hit. So that's gotten better. So there's a lot of things about it that are better. But I think other classes got even more betterer. If that makes sense.
It perfect sense. Yeah, the rogue got improvements and at the same time got outpaced by everybody else's improvements.
Yeah.
If we are judging it on like damage per round, right? Like in a fight, a rogue is less effective. It is very hard for me to see around my biases because I love rogues because of all of the other things that they do. Like a lot of what the rogues bring into the table is you can't touch me, and if you can, you're never going to kill me, and I'm out of here. And every other aspect of the game, like what exploration there is available, like all the things that the ranger doesn't get to do, it's because the rogue is doing because we're only in the dungeon. Yeah, just I like a skill monkey. I like the class fantasy of like the pauper with a heart of gold who's going to pick your pocket so we can buy you a Christmas present. Like that's all. That's my speed.
Well, and I think that's probably the thing that kind of felt bad about the rogue in 2014, the fact that it was one of the more combat effective classes,
Hmm.
and it also shined outside of combat because
Yeah.
of all the skills. So I'm okay with Rogue getting a little. Well, it didn't get a nerf. It got better. It's definitely better than the 5th edition. It didn't get as many improvements as the other classes, I don't think. But the new cunning strike allows you to do extra stuff with your sneak attack damage, which is kind of cool. So you can replace one of your damage dice to do different things like knock the opponent prone and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can impose disadvantage. You can knock them prone, and you can move. Right? Yeah, you can withdraw. Is the other one.
And then at higher levels you get more options too that use up more of your dice and do more stuff. So you definitely have a lot more options, which the Rogue already had a lot of options.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know what the complexity chart says the Rogue is, but there's a lot you can do with Rogue now. So you got plenty of things you can shift around and do different types of attacks. The other thing I would say about the Rogue is I think the Rogue and the Ranger are going to be your go-tos for ranged combat, right? If you want to be the Archer, because like we talked about before, there's not as many ways to get damage bonuses to ranged weapons, right? Because Sharpshooter was one of the main ways to do that before, and it doesn't give the damage bonus like it used to. But Hunter's Mark applies to ranged attacks, and Rogue Sneak Attack still applies to ranged attacks. So there's that's going to make the Ranger and the Rogue stand out here. If you're going to try to build an Archer character, I think those are your two options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's a class fantasy and a play style of like, I don't like it when they hit me. Like that's a very that's a popular opinion, right? Especially from a certain kind of player. So yeah, backline builds, you give up a little bit for that.
Yeah, looking at like for me, so I've not played a Rogue that much, but we've transitioned to 2024 while I am playing a Rogue. And immediately I just noticed like some of these abilities kind of didn't work for my idea because I was playing a swashbuckler. So it was more of a combat centric Rogue. And immediately, and like it has to do specifically with the character, but like I would go through these abilities and I was like, Arcane Trickster, you get some spells. I'm already multi-classed into Bard. Or I go Assassin. Seems cool. Like it's all right. I have advantage on initiative rolls. I already have a Weapon of Warning. I already get that. And so like I was going through, I'm like, it's just not working for that character. And I wish that there was a like mass combat focused Rogue subclass that just doesn't seem to exist outside of maybe Psionics, or what is it, the Soul Knife. But even then, like I like the idea of having a little bit more proficiency in combat to like jump in, stab, jump out, and immediately giving all of them steady aim kind of takes that away, where it's like, oh, I have this really cool ability that I'm never going to use. I'm never going to use it in combat. And it feels like a lot like transitioning characters, at least. I'm already seeing like, I'm not going to use half of these abilities. Do I still remain a Rogue, or do I bite the bullet and go toward, fighter or something?
Yeah, that's interesting because the Swashbuckler was supposed to be in the 2024 book. And it got dropped kind of last minute and replaced with the Soul Knife. So it would have been interesting to see the finished version of the 2024 Swashbuckler.
I agree. I wish we had that. I'm wondering if they maybe they already have like a book that it's going to come out in, and it's like a C-based book, and they're like, oh, we'll just throw it in there. That's my only assumption for replacing it with something like a Soul Knife, because they already had a magic-esque subclass.
Right. Well, and then they also said that they wanted to put more psionics in the game, because they had the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer and what's the Jedi subclass for fighter?
Not Eldritch. Hold please.
Psi Knight?
Yeah, Psi Knight, I think. Yeah. Yeah, it's basically playing a Jedi. Um,
Yep.
yeah,
And
so
that feels like tea leaves for what's coming. Like, why are we so interested in getting psionics into the core rule book now, guy? Like, that's as much as I wanted the swashbuckler over Soul Knife, just selfishly. Like, I am very intrigued by incorporating psionics into the base of the game and what that means going forward, if anything. But I'm hopeful it means something.
yeah. So we know they're coming out with a Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, right?
Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and they could even call it Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide because they're pretending that Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide didn't exist, right?
That was so weird. They were just like, oh yeah, it was the first of its kind. I'm like,
There's a lot of gaslighting happening with the whole PR campaign. It's a
Yep.
brand new Ranger. It's like, no, what? This is very familiar to me. The first of its kind. We've never done a gazetteer of Forgotten Realms.
Yep. So we know we're getting a Forgotten Realms book, right? If we're reading the tea leaves, maybe we're getting an adventure that's gonna have a psionic flavor since they wanted all these psionic classes in the core game. So that allows us to kind of speculate as to what's next. I wonder if the swashbuckler will be in the Sword Coast Adventurers.
I could see it. Yeah.
Mm.
And I guess I shouldn't call it Sword Coast because it's the whole, they're doing more of the Forgotten Realms than just the Sword Coast this time around.
It's only mostly Sword Coast.
Sean, what were you about to say?
I was gonna say I'm curious if this has to do at all with the influence of psionics in Baldur's Gate 3 and just how prolific it was. I wonder if people are like, we really want something like related to that, and maybe they're like, okay, maybe we can start adding more psionics in to kind of draw those players in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I was also gonna say the only Forgotten Realms guide you need is this one. Right there. The old 3.5 edition.
Yeah.
I found that on sale.
Nice. Yeah, and that's the thing that I guess it's because I played so many editions of D&D, I don't really understand why people get like so bent out of shape that Wizards of the Coast didn't give us all these things sooner, right? It's like we have all the ones from previous editions. They like the mechanics aren't going to work necessarily, but all the lore is there. Like you could pick up the 3rd edition version, or even go back to like 1st edition Dragonlance books, right? And the lore still exists, So I don't.
You can go on Twitter and ask Ed Greenwood a question, and he's probably going to answer you.
The dude loves his campaign setting, right? Like he is all about it. Yeah, and you can also ask, on his videos, because he's doing YouTube videos now. You can put questions in his comment section. So
Yeah, and he knows he's not coming up with an. He's like, oh, that's a good question. Let me think about that. He knows the answer. He's known it for a decade. It's just not written down anywhere yet.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be a good stopping point for our discussion on the New Player's Handbook, and we'll pick this up next week as we finish out the classes. So next week we'll do Sorcerer, Wizard, and Warlock, right?
Ooh,
Yeah,
getting into the good stuff.
Yeah,
The S tier. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, no, we're not. My bad.
Sean, you want to plug anything while you're on here? Tell us what you got going on.
Yeah, I have a video coming out this Monday that I'm working on right now. Just before logging onto this interview, I got the chance to interview Amy Vorpahl. Sorry, Vorpahl. Yes, I learned where the emphasis goes in the last name, and it was about her new show Goblin Mode that is on Geek and Sundry, which has been making a comeback through LDN. And I've watched the first episode, watched part of the second episode. Incredible, and getting to speak to her, this kind of legend, this kind of this famous person in our hobby, was incredible, and she was an incredible person. So that's really all I got to promote. If you guys want to watch that video coming out this Monday.
That's exciting. I enjoy all your like where are they now videos. That's all good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch those.
Yeah, folks, if you have not seen Sean do his thing, like he goes deep. The channel is aptly named. It wasn't the last video, but two like expect footnotes. Like he's doing research. He knows what he's not just spouting off like some of us, some of the time.
Ryan, you got any updates on your book? Do we?
I'm waiting for the printing process to happen for the final proof, and then I flip a switch, and it is up for sale. So it is coming. Please be kind and patient. This is why I didn't charge people for the book ahead of time, because things happen.
So if we don't already have a copy, we can get the PDF now, right?
Absolutely. So it's on DriveThruRPG. You can get a PDF today, and DriveThruRPG is pretty good at crediting you, like acknowledging that you've purchased the PDF. So when you buy the bundle, you can still get the discount on the book when the physical copies of the book are available. So I know there's some people who are waiting for the physical book, and I get it. I like having actual paper in my hands, and it will be here soon. Thank you for your patience.
Looking forward to it. All right. So anything else before we wrap up?
Nope. Tune in next time to see Jim pay his penance. We'll figure out how.
I think we should come up with a game, Ryan, and surprise him. Like
Absolutely.
He surprised us with the Guess the Magic Item game.
We'll talk after the stream. Can't let him in on the secret.
Put him on the spot. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. This has been Casual Fridays, and we will see you next week. Oh, I hit the wrong button. There we go.